My name is Aaron Klein. I am the Engineering Abroad Manager. And with me today, I have two of my colleagues from OIA, the Office of International Affairs, Vinod Rani, who is with our India Gateway in India, as well as Caitlin Witzman, who works for our Global Gateways here in Columbus, Ohio. This series we have been holding all throughout the spring semester, where we have been engaging with international scholars as well as business leaders in areas around STEM. We're very happy today to have with us Dr. Simi Mehta to talk about climate change. I do want to let you know we are going to be recording this lecture. At the end, we are going to have an interactive Q&A, so please submit your questions on Zoom. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please submit any questions throughout this lecture, and my colleague Caitlin will be able to queue those questions up and to ask Dr. Mehta at the end of our lecture. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague Vinod Rani from the India Gateway, who is going to talk to us and give us an update about what is happening at the India Gateway. Vinod?
To everyone in Ohio, and good evening to those who are listening from India. My name is Vinod Rani, and I work with the Ohio State University India Gateway Office as an alumni relations specialist. So in my role, I am responsible for alumni engagement from the pool of 600 alumni and Buckeyes in India. And so it is India Gateway. We have been into our 10th year, so we just celebrated our 9th year of India Gateway since its establishment. And so the central purpose of India Gateway is the creating and implementing strategic research and academic engagements in India, promoting inbound and outbound students, and leveraging a thriving alumni network speed across India. So we majorly focus in the healthcare domain, engineering and technology, and business management. We also work with our partners, just to name a few, it's Tata, Mahindra, and Nanavati hospitals, as well as some of the government agencies, as well as US consulates. And so we are working with the hospitals into healthcare and as well as into sustainability. We did a joint conference with the US consulate. And I'd like to thank Simi Mehta for accepting this opportunity and to present. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. We're very fortunate here at Ohio State to have such great colleagues and connections throughout the world, but especially in India because of our India Gateway office. So as I mentioned, our guest of honor today is Dr. Simi Mehta. She is the CEO and editorial director of the Impact and Policy Research Institute, also known as IMPRI. She holds a PhD in American Studies from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and was a Fulbright Nehru Doctoral Research Fellow here at Ohio State. She represented India in the South Asia Connect program for startup entrepreneurs, a Nexus startup hub at the American Center in New Delhi, and was subsequently chosen for the 50-day pre-incubation program at the center conducted by IC2 Institute at the University of Texas at Austin. Her areas of research include US and India's agricultural and foreign policies, international security studies, sustainable development, climate change, gender justice, urban environment, and food security. She is a regular commentator on these issues in print and electronic media and has contributed more than 24 research articles in reputable national and international journals. Dr. Mehta is the author of a book, Lessons in Sustainable Development from Bangladesh and India, which was recently published in 2019. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Simi Mehta.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you very much, Vinod. So if you permit, may I share your screen? Can I share the screen?
Yes, you should be able to see. Do you see?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. And while I'm sharing my screen, I take this opportunity to thank all of you for joining me this evening from India. And I'm really thankful to the Office of International Affairs and the India Gateway Office of the Ohio State University for having organized this event. I am really honored. So if you could just give me a heads up if my screen is visible.
Yep, I see it.
Great, thank you so much. So well, I have been asked to talk about my career journey and global experiences, and also then talk about a little bit on sustainability and climate change, which my presentation will be about. So the first half would be my humble career journey, and then second half would be the topic. So with all humility, I would like to take you through my career. My early childhood was spent in a state called Jharkhand, which and the place is called Ranchi. And then um, uh, I studied sciences, mathematics, economics, and I had the sole aim to join the All India services. With these thoughts in mind as my career options, I moved to Delhi and enrolled to the most prestigious institution called University of Delhi for an honors in political science. So, studying political science right after studying sciences, well, I found myself in a fix as to what are these terms called liberalism or Marxism or constructivism or even all those isms. It was really, really difficult. But then it was only a moment or matter of time that I mastered these and excelled. And the result was that I topped all the 3 years of my undergrads, not just at college level, but also at the university level. And with such a uh, sense of academic empowerment, I just couldn't come to terms with myself that the 3 years of undergrad course had just passed by. So I really wanted to study further. And with this thought in mind, I entered, or I attempted for the toughest, so to say, the toughest entrance exams in India for arts and humanities. And I was able to join the very coveted Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. I had developed an interest in international affairs and international politics. And with somewhere around close to 200,000 students appearing for this entrance exam from all over the country and even abroad, I secured a rank for a master's degree in politics with specialization in international relations from the School of International Studies. So it is often said when you enter JNU or Jawaharlal Nehru University, once you enter the campus, which sprawls over, beautiful campus sprawls over 1,000 acres, you leave with a PhD at hand. So this came true for me as well. I appeared for the MPhil and PhD integrated program, and I got through, and I was part of the American Studies program at the School of International Studies. So with this, while I was pursuing my studies, I applied for the Fulbright Nehru Doctoral Research Fellowship, and I was awarded the prestigious award. And what better than pursuing a part of your PhD in the US, because your PhD topic actually involves US-India collaborations, economic ties broadly, and agricultural relations in particular. So not only the Fulbright experience would mean to enrich my entire experience, but it would also provide me the opportunity and invaluable experience to study in one of the most prestigious and eminent institutions of the world. The College of Food, Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, Ratan Lal Center for Carbon Management and Sequestration Center at Ohio State University. So an indication of my good fortune continued, and it meant my supervisors, who have long ties and experiences on working on strengthening US-India collaborations in the field of agriculture. It was a sheer good fortune to work under them, and I'm really grateful. So I had the invitation letters for my Fulbright application from 6 different universities, but I had selected Ohio State precisely because of the 2 supervisors, the 2 professors, Professor David Hansen and Professor Ratan Lal. And I'm sure all of you are aware of the laurels that Professor Ratan Lal has brought to us in India and to you at Ohio State and everywhere, wherever he is associated with. So recently he was awarded the World Food Prize in 2020 and also the Padma Shri, which is the fourth highest civilian award provided by the government of India for his achievements in scientific excellence in this year, very recently in 2021. So it was an absolute honor for me to have worked under them. It was under their guidance, actually, that I started exploring different dimensions of food, agriculture, nutrition, and water security issues, and also implications on climate change. And their teachings on the concept of indivisibility of the sustainability through the integral health of soils, plants, animals, ecosystem in general, particularly interested me. And why was this? Because I was present at CMASC in 2015, and it was then that the Sustainable Development Goal era actually began. And in fact, I've had the opportunity to co-author a few journal articles and book chapters along with my professors. And I have continued to engage in intellectual discourses since then with both of them. And thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the CMASC team who is present here at my request. Thank you so much. So after returning to India and submission of my PhD dissertation, I began with my research entrepreneurship journey, and I co-founded IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, a policy think tank for evidence and action-based policy research in thematic areas of social, economic, political, and environmental aspects of development. As Aaron was mentioning, I represented India at the South Asia Connect program by the Nexus Startup Hub at the American Center of the United States Embassy here in Delhi. And after that, I was subsequently chosen for the 50-day incubation program at the center. And I have had the opportunity to present my research papers in different universities in the US and at other places in the world. As mentioned, I have co-authored a handbook on lessons on sustainable development from Bangladesh and India. And to delve into, so sustainability and climate change, as you are seeing, is coming up very much right after I got the opportunity to be at the Ohio State. So to build upon these thematic areas, different thematic areas of sustainability, we actually instituted a special center, IMPRI, Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, and along with seven other dedicated centers. So in this center, what we aim to do is we have organized around 50 web policy talks and panel discussions on issues relating to climate and sustainability in both India and around the world in just the past 6 months. So we focus more on these issues and also conduct appropriate policy research. So with this background, I now would like to begin the second part of my presentation, which is the topic sustainability and climate change. So all of us know, although we might be in denial, several of us might be in denial, but what is true is climate change is real and it is happening. And hence, there is the need to adopt mechanisms and practices that would ensure sustainable development. The essence of development lies in meeting the fundamental human needs in ways that they preserve the life support systems at present and also take care of the future. So the overriding rationale is the need to reconcile the prevailing and anticipated contradictions between the society and the economy and the environment, between present and the future. And so with this introduction, the focus of my talk would be what sustainability is about and how does changing climate actually, it impacts hunger, poverty, and other socio-economic distresses. So, and also I would lead or end by providing some recommendations for appropriate policy responses on mitigation and adaptation of climate change for supporting the ecological pillar. There are other two pillars, which I'll be talking subsequently, of sustainable development. So, so understanding sustainability. Sustainable development has been defined especially since 1987 after the Brundtland Commission report, that it means the development that meets the need of the present without compromising on the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And this has been accepted by several subsequent international forums and agreements, and also treaties. And this concept of sustainable development actually permeated throughout the past 2 decades. We have seen especially the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development, which adopted or which made it clear that sustainable development has clearly become a widely held political and social goal. And since then, there has been no looking back after the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the United Nations. So with this background, authors have also emphasized upon three dimensions to sustainable development. The first is the economic dimension, which aims to improve, say, for example, human welfare through real income, or and also the ecological dimension, which seeks to protect the integrity and resilience of ecological systems, and also the social dimension, which actually focuses on enriching the human relationships, individual and group aspirations, and also addresses the concerns related to social justice by promoting greater social awareness. So while definitions of sustainability varies across sectors, but their common theme is to change the way resources are exploited or hazards are managed. And these hazards can be natural or anthropogenic, so as to avoid the adverse impacts downstream or for the subsequent generations. So how does a changing climate impact hunger, poverty, and lead to other socio-economic distresses? So in this section, I would be talking a little bit about India's examples. So the climate change actually adds to the list of the stressors that challenge our ability to achieve the ecological, economic, and social objectives that define sustainable development. So basically all the three pillars. We have seen that, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, and less for other parts of the world, that climate change is impacting agriculture and also agricultural productivity. Agricultural production, productivity, and also the prices, they are all triggered by climate change, and they significantly affect the poor people. And who are most impacted are the poor communities who are dependent upon the ecosystem-based livelihoods, and especially in the coastal areas, the impacts can be seen as being huge. It has been estimated that by 2030, around 122 million additional people could experience extreme poverty, mainly due to higher food prices, declining health, implying increased inequalities. So what does this actually imply upon the sustainable development goals? This means that the SDGs are being threatened, the very reasons or the very goals towards which all the countries are striving towards to achieve. So climate change will not only impact the economic growth or SDG 8, it would also lead to poverty multiplier. So it would impact our SDG 1, where the poor would become poorer, and then it would eventually lead to increased inequalities, the SDG 10. Here I would like to point out that the environmental challenges are exacerbating socio-economic challenges like forced migration, food insecurity, lack of employment opportunities, limited access to social protection, social welfare, etc. So I would like to draw your attention towards the Himalayas, the Indian subcontinent. The Himalayas are the world's tallest mountain range, And as a glaring instance of how climate change is actually amplifying the dangers to life and the entire ecosystem. So it is actually if we see the Himalayan region, this one, yeah. So we all know that that temperatures around the world are increasing, and also that in the Himalayan region, if you just see this area, the north of the borders, so the temperatures of the Himalayas are increasing rapidly, and it is leading to melting of glaciers at a rapid pace. So essentially, this is putting the entire ecosystem of the whole subcontinent at greater risk. And felling of forests, cutting through the mountain slopes and even digging tunnels for making way for building more houses, industries, roads, dams, etc. They're all leading to challenges. And scientists actually estimate that the Himalayan glaciers will recede by around uh, it will recede at a greater pace, and by the year 2100, if you see over here, if the increase in global temperatures is capped at 1.5 degrees Celsius, and this is an ambitious target which the scientists are saying, and the rapidity with which the glaciers will melt would be far higher if this ambitious target of 1.5 degrees Celsius is missed. So basically, the vulnerability of specific impacts of climate change will be very, very severe when and where they are felt, with stresses from other sources. For instance, the development activities I just spoke about, and I'll be speaking more about it. And I will take the example, very recent example, um, with this map again. Some of you must have watched very recently or even read in the news about a glacier meltdown in the North Indian state, which is rounded like this, the North Indian state of Uttarakhand. Very recently in February, first week of February, which actually led to losses of lives of over 500 people. And it also led to total destruction of hydropower plants, bridges, houses, and a lot of other infrastructure. So this disaster actually brought into focus what the local population and the scientists are saying, that it is a crisis which is unfolding in the Himalayas. It is just a trailer, that they say. And they unequivocally point out towards this crisis as being an explosive cocktail of climate change and unsustainable infrastructure, development of aggressive development or of roads, dams, building in the geologically unstable range. It not just threatens the villages, the people, the economies, and even security of 8 countries in this greater Hindu Kush Himalayan region. So the countries that will be or that stand to be affected are Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, China, Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. So the extent of losses are going to be enormous because of climate change. So if we see this, in this very state, this particular state of Uttarakhand, this kind of disasters is not new. In fact, very recently, again in the year 2013, this state witnessed massive and disastrous flooding. 2013 Uttarakhand floods, it is commonly known as, and it led to losses of lives of over 6,000 people. And the causes are very similar of the recent disaster, yet we haven't learned. So in fact, after this disaster, India's Supreme Court appointed an expert committee, which actually to look into the reasons, the causes for this disaster. And they found that the hydropower dams that are being constructed, that is aggravating the disaster. And this expert committee actually warned against the construction of fragile high altitude areas. So basically this whole area is a fragile ecosystem. ecosystem. So the experts have pointed out that authorities are playing with nature more than they should be doing. And we must not go very, very aggressive in building so many plants, hydropower plants. And the frantic construction, some critics have also argued that frantic construction of hydropower plants is not for energy security. We should not be blinded by this so-called energy security goal, but rather it is for revenue that they are going to bring to the local governments and developers through investments, etc. So this is a very, very short-sighted objective. In contrast, if you see this map again, the people living in these high altitude areas are not very affluent, and what the region actually needs is a lot of schools, health centers, affordable houses, etc. And therefore, with this objective in mind, we need to close these projects, these so-called development projects, and we need to rethink where the investments need to be brought about. Yes. So, well, we have really not taken much lessons from these disasters. And after 2013 flood, the disaster that struck the state of Uttarakhand, we started with building a highway, which is called the Char Dham Highway. Char Dham Highway, it actually means it connects the 4 major pilgrimage centers of Hinduism, and this is a 500-mile project. And it is, if you see again, this whole terrain is very, very mountainous, and of course, as it is in the Himalayas. So what we are doing is to build this Char Dham highway. It is 2-lane each side. So imagine what we are going to do. We are widening the narrow and difficult terrains through the mountains up to 10 meters. And the logic that the government and the authorities are giving is that it would bring more pilgrims, tourists, and also eventually economic benefits, while allowing the ready access to borders with China. And some of you must be aware of the India-China standoff. So this is for geopolitical benefits as well. So, but what is being ignored is the fact that tree and mountain cutting that is required to build this kind of highway, it would exacerbate the dangers like landslides. And it definitely would, because, and the model of development that is being imposed upon the people of that particular region, it is not going to work. Recently, in the year 2020, October 2020, the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush belt, they met and they signed an agreement to work together for climate action. But this can be considered to be just an eyewash, because in reality, there is some amount of skepticism. Many say that cooperation and data sharing on issues like river flows is being hampered by strategic concerns and geopolitical paranoia. In India's neighborhood, if you know, there is a country called Nepal. The former water resources minister, Deepak Gyawali, he had pointed out that in reality, these summits happen and that is fine. Media, it gets media attention, etc. But for an average politician of this particular region in the global south, there are too many here-to-here and now-to-now problems that you need to attend to the immediate challenges. And therefore, climate change is just too far away on the horizon to actually matter at policy level. So with this understanding, if you are aware that China is actually building several dams on the eastern side of India's border, especially Arunachal Pradesh, the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which is again a challenge, point of challenge between the two countries. In fact, the state of Arunachal Pradesh is called as Southern Tibet by the Chinese, which actually is part of the sovereign territory of India. So this kind of geopolitical concerns and aggressionism is being felt in the side of the world. Um, the Chinese have started building a number of, in fact, 9 dams, and it is adding to the mistrust. And that is why one of the reasons that the Hindu Kush Himalayas, the summit type of events do not really matter. And to that extent, Mr. Deepak Gyavali's remarks stand true. So they do not actually see any kind of reason that why they should cooperate, why I think why the countries should cooperate, because from an realistic perspective, in the theories of international relations, the incentive of cooperation between the countries is going to be very, very low, especially when you have adversaries like India and China having huge military powers. So with this, so having this understanding of so much of realities, the negative realities that are there, and we need to have appropriate policy responses on mitigation and adaptation towards climate change for supporting the ecological pillar. So it is considered that if we support the ecological pillar of sustainable development, we are naturally going to help or to advance the other 2 pillars, which is the social pillars as well as the economic pillar of sustainable development. So some of my recommendations are, we all know that the Sustainable Development Goal 13, it calls for climate action, and efforts to cope with the impacts of climate action and attempts to promote sustainable development requires, in fact, a whole bunch of activities, a whole bunch of convergence between governments at all levels: local, state, national, and also international level. So what do we need to do is, just give me a moment. So what are the ways that we can promote sustainable development? Some of the ways that I have identified through my research include promotion of greater awareness on environmental issues. We need to incorporate a lot of activities, or we need to incorporate the climate change and uncertainty into measures to reduce the vulnerability to hazards and disasters, in order to which is actually essential for being toward or for moving towards sustainable development, which actually leads to true sustainability. And we need to integrate the disaster risk management into the development interventions. The technical and economic aspects of renewable resource management could illustrate the efforts to support sustainable development by working with the economy ecology connection. So this nexus is very important, the economy ecology connection, and these will be further beneficial if these are nested within the decision space of other development pressures, including poverty. So the work towards poverty eradication and all sorts of socio-economic and environmental pressures would have collective action. We all know that many adaptations can be implemented at low costs, and comprehensive estimates of these costs and benefits do not really exist very, very clearly. But yes, there are some costs and benefits related to adapting to sea level rises, or even changes in the temporal and spatial demand for energy. For example, heating versus cooling, how much is the temperature differences, etc. But all these needs to be collectively taken at an urgent basis. all the countries should develop a long-term pragmatic and apolitical track on civilizational survival. So we need to ensure that the civilization survives, and therefore adversities or antagonistic feelings between countries based on border issues, river water sharing issues, all these should be pushed back. So we need to have a longer term strategy. So further, we need to have efforts to promote alternative development. And what this alternative development pathways could include, it could include ways and measures to reduce non-renewable energy consumption. For example, shifting the construction of residential and infrastructure in industrial infrastructure to promote to avoid greater risks, and especially in the high risk areas. We need to have strengthened linkages between government and people, and consequently we need to have activities like building local level convergences, and these are some of the key factors for robust progress towards sustainability at the grassroots level. So grassroots level empowerment is very much needed. Further, what is very important, and it is coming up in literature and evidence these days, is promotion of indigenous and tradition based knowledge in how communities adapt and mitigate climate change. So this has or respect for indigenous and tradition based knowledge has been had been pushed to the back burner, and in fact technology had taken over. But now when we know the limitations of technology, we are seeing that indigenous knowledge needs to be promoted. People are calling for it, and this is going to help in adapting, or help the communities in adapting and mitigating climate change. Very recently, what was discovered is that in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, in the 8th century, the kings that they were ruling in the state, they belonged to the Chola dynasty, and they actually engaged with the farmers to develop an interconnected system of check dams, canals, and natural and human constructed dams to manage the river water efficiently. And at that time, the borders were not very fixed between the states. So this was done in accordance with the seasonal river flows, and also according to the contours of the land. Somewhere it was upstream, somewhere it was downstream, and hence this was quite successful. And measures like this, with a genuine understanding of the challenge, it would actually help towards the adaptation measures to reduce vulnerabilities and risks by enhancing the adaptive capacity of the communities and also of the economies. This would be consistent with the sustainability goals. So how do we ensure this kind of traditional knowledge is being fostered? We need to have participatory processes in research and practice that can foster links with poverty reduction and increased support, designed to engage the professionals, the researchers, the governments at local levels in developing countries, especially. Then we need to have sustainable natural resource management, which is key to sustained economic growth and poverty reduction. This kind of sustainable natural resource management, it calls for clean energy sources, the nature and pattern of energy usage, agriculture, industry, and trade. It should not unduly impinge upon the ecological health and resilience of the ecosystem. And otherwise, if it does impinge, the very basis of economic growth will be shattered. And how it will be shattered? It will be shattered through rapid environmental degradation, as we have seen in the case of the state of Uttarakhand. And it would have several other consequent challenges. Developing and employing eco-technologies is very important. What are these eco-technologies? It is based on the integration of traditional and frontier technologies, including biotechnologies, renewable energy sources, and also modern management techniques. And these become very critical in these are really critical in terms of the principles of economics, taking care of gender sensitivity, having social equity, and even employment generation, with due emphasis which is given to climate change. And for environmentally sustainable economic growth and social progress, and therefore which would actually lead to ecological restoration and ecological sustainability, we need to have the development policies. And these development policies must inform the work of the climate change community, such that together that they bring the perspectives to bear to formulation and the implementation of integrated approaches, and also processes that recognize how persistent poverty and environmental needs exacerbate the adverse consequences of climate change. So these are the few recommendations, policy recommendations that I have, that would lead to promotion of sustainability and sustainable development. And to conclude, overall, what I understand is that reducing vulnerability to the hazards associated with current and future climate variability and extremes through specific policies and programs, individual initiatives, participatory planning processes, and other community approaches can reduce vulnerability to climate change. And in order to go down this integrated and participatory road, we need a strong political will, which is very, very important, and a public commitment to promote sustainable development, and simultaneously focus on economic growth, social progress, environmental conservation, and also adaptation to climate change. For this, the private and the public sectors need to work together within a framework of identified roles for each of them without impinging upon the roles of either of them. And so that these perspectives, the social, economic, and ecological perspectives of sustainability, are built into the process, naturally built into the process. And lastly, the coordination among national development and climate change communities, as well as coordination among appropriate national and international institutions, is very important. And in this perspective, all the UNFCCC's treaties and agreements, and also the summits that are being held, is very important and relevant. And therefore, I would like to conclude by saying that achieving sustainability is non-negotiable, and it is the key to a secure future for its citizens, the entire ecosystem, and also for planet Earth. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Simi. We do have some questions for you if you're ready. So one question is, how do you navigate dealing with individuals who don't necessarily believe that climate change is an important issue?
Just give me a moment.
Sure.
Yes. So it is actually a tough path to navigate, and perhaps this is one of the reasons that even the international agreements, the international agreements which are so well objective, they have so many noble objectives, I would rather say, that they actually fail. So how do we navigate? We need to have conflict resolution mechanisms into place, where between the conflicting parties, between parties who are not able to understand the challenges that might go long term, that might go against them in the long term, so that these are mitigated, these efforts, the positives are brought to the forefront in a more better manner. And while they have something to lose or some negatives that are there in the immediate term, but in the longer term, it would be a win-win for all. So we need to ensure that this kind of an understanding is instilled upon them, upon the conflicting parties. And of course, this type of education needs to be taught at the school level, And so that as children grow older and as they become policymakers, negotiators, etc., so they have that sense of responsibility towards their planet and towards their communities.
One question from the audience, they had said they agree with Indigenous knowledge as one of the measures for sustainable development. It is exemplified by, sorry if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, Rahibai Soma, who is a Padam Shri awardee, who has adopted Indigenous seed farming, which promoted livelihood as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that this is more of a comment rather than a question, but certainly this is a case of India itself, and this lady has been given the Padma Shri award for her dedication and for her work and for promoting at the grassroots level. And there are several other examples of indigenous mechanisms or indigenous ways that that the communities, the local communities, are helping people to adapt. I'll just give you another example. Um, One example is very recently in the state of Maharashtra. There was a place which was really stinking, and it had a small water body, and like around 7 years back, it was a very bad place. No one would want to go, but having had the experiences, and the older people, the elderly of that particular area, they came together and then they discussed that, wait, um, this place had visitors from all around the world, in terms of migratory birds, and over 600 species of birds used to visit. So what happened in like 20, 25, 30 years? So this kind of knowledge was then passed on to the policymakers, and what the policymakers did was that they wanted their knowledge to be incorporated. And within so if the policy is correct or the policy is supportive of such knowledge, what happens is that uh, within 2 years time, that stinky place, it turned to be, it actually brought back the migratory birds to that whole area. So if the policy is in tune with the traditional knowledge and the indigenous knowledge, because the elderly population, they said that, look, these are the weeds that are hampering, and of course the pollution and water pollution, etc., these are hampering the natural resources development in the area. And it was understood, well taken by the policy, and even the communities took it in a good light, and they implemented it. And now the whole area is seeing it is bustling with birds and natural species.
Great. So let's see. In terms of sustainability, is there technology abroad that the US needs to adopt?
In terms of sustainability, well, this is a question, very interesting question, because all throughout the time that we have seen is that US is selling its technologies abroad, right? So I would rather see it as whichever technology or whichever step forward which is being taken in the right step, or which is being taken in the right direction, and it is being implemented in that particular area or particular region. Because what works for the US in your temperatures and your time zones, or your the temperatures are different, and our temperatures are different, the tropics, the temperate zone, etc. So it is difficult to adapt or adopt fully, but we can definitely learn from each other. It's not that the global south has to learn from the north, or it cannot be vice versa. The whole idea is that the governments and the people must be open to what works, and they can similarly emulate the policies, emulate the technologies, and it can be a win-win for the planet. In fact, we should be more concerned about the planet rather than selling off our technologies or imposing them upon others.
Another question is, how do we ensure participation in light of Belt and Road initiatives carried out across Asia and Africa by the Chinese state? How can sustainability be achieved in light of building big and technomage rail discourse?
Okay, so I guess it is about the Belt and Road Initiative of China, and it is a massive project which it has undertaken. Trillions of dollars are being pumped into it, and it aims to connect the land and the sea to as many countries across the world who are accepting this initiative. So, uh, well, as you know, America, the United States, and India both have not joined this BRI. But how do we ensure that there is participation? What China is saying, or what China is trying to make the recipient countries understand, is that look, we are not here to colonize you. I mean, this is a geopolitical sense that they are trying to build upon the people. We are actually trying to develop you. We are trying to ensure that there is vigorous development of infrastructure. You will have ports, you will have roads, you will have accompanying development in the area where you are developing, and this will be by your participation. This is what the Chinese have to say. Well, what is the reality? Observers outside the outside the scene, or neutral observers understand, is that they are pumping a lot of dollars, a lot of money, and in fact they are sending their own people to do all these to undertake all these activities, the managerial activities or the higher up whatever activities that they are doing. So we need to ensure, in fact it is the responsibility of the recipient countries, the partner countries of BRI, to ensure that they do not sign on the dotted lines. They read through the agreements, they read through all the fine prints, and so that they do not have to lose 30, 40, or even 99 years down the line, because 99 years lease is what the Chinese are attempting at in these places. So uh, and if the observers at the natural resources level, or sustainability observers, I would say, if they observe that for example, if you see the case of Pakistan, the BRI in Pakistan is called CPEC, and in terms of bringing development to that region, it is very close to the Indian border, and Chinese really want that whole place to be developed. So what they are actually doing is, in the name of development, they are wiping out very, very important natural resources. They are they are actually doing a lot of or bringing a lot of challenge to the whole region. Of course, it is again in the Himalayan belt. The terrain is difficult. It is a seismic zone, high earthquake prone zone. So it is up to the, it should be up to the level of the governments or of the countries that they are engaging with, that need to be very, very aware, instead of simply going for the short-term objective of bringing in economic growth for their countries.
Another question. So race of development among countries is a deteriorating environment. Why developing countries are more concerned than developed countries about climate change, be it America, China. It is being observed that there are initiatives that they don't want climate change to improve, such as America resisting climate agreements, China's deteriorating environment. What mindset must developed countries possess that they fail to recognize the deterioration?
Well, this is a very interesting question. And in fact, the countries who are in denial that climate change is hoax, and we are not really going to suffer, because in my lifetime climate change is not going to happen. So this kind of very selfish sort of understanding should not prevail, because climate change says, if we personify climate change, it would say that I am coming after you, because the rest of the world who are in a troubled zone, for example, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, so all these countries would fall first, perhaps because of the challenges that are being provided by the developed North. So even if these countries like China, US, they are resilient, and in fact, one of the good reasons or good effects of climate change in your own agricultural production in the United States has been that the productivity has increased, because it is warmer, and then you have a lot of agricultural productivity. But going ahead, say 30 years down the line, this is going to trouble you. So we need to have a longer term perspective. And we, as in not just sitting in US or India or developed North, global South, wherever we are, we need to understand from the perspective of those who are suffering, because it's not that just the third person is suffering. It will definitely come after us if we are not taking care of these obvious implications. 1.5 degrees Celsius, as I mentioned, is a very ambitious target. We are not sure that we are even able to maintain it. All the countries have their NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, but are we really going towards it? Are we going to achieve them in the foreseeable future? And if we are not serious about it, the policy makers, the governments, because it is normally seen that the communities are more sensitive to these issues, and therefore what is required is that all the countries work in tandem with the communities, with all the stakeholders, whether it is in the developed countries or in the developing countries, so that their initiatives and whatever they are committing, say for example the Paris Agreement, or in the as their NDCs, they are actually living to their commitment. So they should underline their commitment towards sustainability. Otherwise, we are all up for a big mess.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions right now, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to give any closing thoughts that you have before we wrap up the presentation today.
Well, climate change and sustainability is such a complex topic. In fact, in research as well, and if it is only if climate change is studied in silos in terms of natural sciences, then it will only be a few handful of people who will be understanding the real meaning of climate change. Once it is told, or once it is communicated to the people, the larger population, in understandable terms, and there the social sciences come into the picture. When it is communicated or conveyed in terms of normal understanding, not in technical jargons, etc., then people will understand. Then people will come to know that there is a challenge, because every other year we know that there is early onset of winters in India, for example. Right in January and February, we are seeing that we have to use fans and air conditioners, etc. So we are aware that things are changing. We are also aware that in terms of massive floods, the rainy season, somewhere it is drought in the country, or somewhere there is excess of water. So all these things people are understanding, and it is the people at the grassroots level who are suffering. So if these thoughts are clearly communicated to the policy and vice versa, how we are going to fight. And in this place, I would like to point out the role of the scientific community, that they have a huge role to play. Normally, the scientific community are into their laboratories and research papers, etc., etc. But once they begin to communicate to the people, and once their opinion are taken by the policymakers, it would really yield to a lot of difference. And so I would like to end with this, that we are in this together, and whichever place we are in the world, uh, we have to have a degree of responsibility, and only then degree of responsibility towards the planet, and only then we can really talk about that sustainability without or sustainable development, that our development needs should not impinge or infringe upon the needs of the future generations. So otherwise we are in for a big challenge. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Simi, for your presentation today and for being here on behalf of all of us at Ohio State. We're so grateful for your time and for being here with us. And thank you to our participants for being here. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. We have one more of this panel series for Buckeye Bridge. I'm sending the registration link in the chat. So that one will be on April 15th, where our presenter will be talking about Internet of Things. In partnership with our India Gateway. But thank you so much again. We're so grateful for you. Thank you to the India Gateway for helping to make this connection. But thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you so much, Aaron. And Vinod, thank you so much. Wish you a very good day.
Thanks, Simi. Thanks.